Did Dash kill? I mean, I know it'd be self-defense and all, but did he kill? Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my theological analysis for The Incredibles. I am so flippin' excited for The Incredibles 2. I think I'm actually holding it to an unreasonably high expectation, and I'm really in danger of being let down, but I don't care. The Incredibles is probably my favorite of the Pixar films, and I am just, it's criminal, I tell you, that it has not already had a sequel. So I am flippin' excited that the sequel is finally like less than a week away, and I absolutely cannot wait to see this movie. So I thought this is the perfect time to jump backwards in time and dig deep into the first Incredibles.
He got away.
Good thing, too. You were this close to losing your teeth.
So when you look at The Incredibles, there's this awesome scene towards the end where the entire Parr family has been captured. All the Incredibles are captured. They're in Syndrome's weird little thing where they're held, whatever that is. And Bob is just reflecting on things. And he reflects on the fact that he has been obsessed with being undervalued. That he feels the world and everybody has been undervaluing him. And because he's been so undervalued, he's undervalued his family.
I can't believe you don't want to go to your own son's graduation.
It's not a graduation. He is moving from the 4th grade to the 5th grade.
It's a ceremony.
It's psychotic. They keep creating new ways to celebrate mediocrity, but if someone is genuinely exceptional,
This is not about you, Bob.
And miss the greatness, the joy, and the adventure that's been right there in front of him this entire time. What's really interesting about that scene when you dive into it, it reveals what's been going on this entire time with Bob. This entire time, Bob, Mr. Incredible, has placed his identity in Mr. Incredible. His whole identity has been wrapped up in being a superhero. Now, being a superhero is his calling, and that is a good thing. To fulfill his calling, he's been given tremendous gifts and talents. And so he's able to step out into that calling with absolute confidence and make a difference in the world. All of that is a good thing, and he should do all of that. The problem is, he so placed his identity in that when it was in its glory days, he felt glorious, and he just thought he was the bomb, that he was the greatest thing out there. And he got so full of himself that even when little buddy, little Syndrome comes up here and he's trying to be Incrediboy, Mr. Incredible couldn't even let the kid down easy. Like, he was really rude and ill-tempered in how he pushed this kid away because I work alone. Like, there's pride, a destructive pride in that statement. Why? Because he was at the height of his glory days, and that's what his identity was wrapped up in. He was untouchable. What's interesting is, Jesus says this, no one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. And I think that saying that Jesus said fits so well with what's going on here. It's because of what Mr. Incredible was serving. He was serving himself, and he put his identity in something shakable. Because he thought being a superhero was unshakable. And then everybody sued him. And then everybody sued all the superheroes. And they all had to go underground. So he put his identity in that world, and that world was shaken. So when that world was shaken, he was shaken, and he was shaken to the core. When you look at him in this movie, and it cuts 15 years later, and he's got his kids and all that stuff, he is a very disconnected guy. He's incredibly unhappy at work. He's incredibly unhappy at home. He's incredibly unhappy stuck in traffic, which I am too. I understand that. The point is, no matter where he's at, no matter what he's doing, he's incredibly unhappy. He's always staring off into space, and he's very disengaged. But then he gets that secret call, and he gets called to the island. He shows up in his Mr. Incredible suit. He defeats the robot, and he is praised for his gifts and his talents. And then he comes back. Now look, he's a changed man. He's kissing his wife. He's playful. He's having fun with his kids. He's engaging with his family. He's back. The Mr. Incredible that we know and love is back. And it's because that's what his identity is wrapped up in. When the world was shaken, he was shaken. When suddenly it looks like he could be a hero again, he's lifted up again. So when it falls again, guess what? He'll fall again. And that's kind of the whole thing of what's going on here. And I've been in that position in real life where I've placed my identity in my career, and I've placed my identity in what I felt is my calling. Now, I have a lot of gifts and talents, and I am confident in those gifts and talents that God has given me because they're gifts that He's given me. But many times, I've made the mistake of wrapping up my identity in my career and in my job. I used to work in Christian radio, most of it nonprofit listener-supported radio. So what happened when I put my identity in that? Well, when one of the stations I was at began to falter because listeners stopped supporting, suddenly I was faltering. Suddenly, I was shaken along with the station, and I was shaken to the core. And when it went under, it's like I went under with it. Why? Because my identity was placed in that. I put my identity in what I was doing, and I felt big and strong and special because of that. And then when it fell, I went down with it. And that's what happens when we place our identities in things that are shakable. It's what Jesus meant when He said you can't serve two masters. So if you serve this master and this master falls, well, what's going to happen? So if you're going to serve someone, you got to serve one who's not going to fall, one who is completely unshakable. By the end of this movie, when Bob is sitting there and he's all tied up with his family and he has that revelation of where he's tied up his identity, he realizes that he's missed an adventure that was in front of him the entire time. See, he had been focused on what he didn't have. He had been focused on the calling that was no longer present, rather than being focused on the calling that was right there in front of him. His wife, his kids, his family. So basically, he rediscovered love. He rediscovered love for his family. And when his identity went back into love, his identity came onto a firm foundation. So in the end, when he fights Syndrome, when he fights the big old giant robot, the calling has more meaning and it has more power because his identity isn't wrapped up in being a hero. His identity is wrapped up in the one thing that is solid and unshakable. And because his identity is now wrapped up in what is unshakable, he can now face this challenge with something new, with a new ferocity, with a new strength, and a new boldness, something that is grounded. And I found that in my relationship with God, that when I finally stopped putting my identity in my gifts and in my talents and in my calling, and I put my identity in God, He's the one that's unshakable. He's the one that's given me gifts and talents to begin with. So when the other things, like a radio station I used to work at, is shaken, but if my identity is fully placed in God, then I'm not shaken with it. It could shake all at once, and it could fall all at once, but I'll still be standing because my identity is in God. I hate that I've still had to learn that lesson the hard way, and every day I still find myself learning that lesson the hard way. But the truth is, when we place our identity in what is unshakable, then we become unshakable. The one thing that is unshakable is Jesus. When we put our identity in Him we're brand new creatures. In Him, we're made new. And the Bible even says tremendous things like we're seated with Christ in heavenly places. Literally, when we put our identity in Jesus, it is something that is unshakable, and it's in a place that is unshakable. So when we go to Him and give Him our lives and give Him our hope, give Him our dreams, give Him our nightmares, if we take all that we are, no matter what it is, positive and negative, and give it to Him and place our identity in Him, rather than the gifts that He's given us, when the identity is in Him, then it's unshakable. Then that brings even more power to the gifts that He's given us, and it brings even more confidence in our lives because now it's rooted into something that's truly solid. And in the end, that's what Bob in Incredibles had to learn.
Oh, my back!
He had to put his identity in love, and the love of his family in the case of this film. By putting his identity in love, something unshakable, then he was able to stand stronger than ever before. So, what did you think of Incredibles if you saw it? Did you see that message in there? Are you excited for Incredibles 2? Let's talk about it in the comments. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified the very next time I drop a theological analysis or my movie review coming out soon for Incredibles 2. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that bell. That way you're notified anytime all of that drops. I want to say a huge thank you to all of my patrons on Patreon. Your support is such an encouraging interesting thing to me. I really, really greatly appreciate it. If you enjoy these theological analyses or anything else I do here on Durbania and you want to support it, Patreon is a great way to support this channel and support what I'm doing here. I do have the link to that in my description, and there's different rewards for different levels of giving, and you can check all of that out. So hit that link in the description and you can check that out if you're interested. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.